Exposed, the hidden truth behind her ugly dress, an unexpected love story with a mafia boss. Nora stood in front of the mirror, staring at the frumpy dress that draped across her frame like a shroud. It was a relic of another era, her grandmother's favorite, a fabric filled with memories and sacrifice. But today it felt like a trap. The upcoming school charity gala loomed before her like a dark cloud, an event meant to breathe hope into a dying town, yet all it had brought was a weight she struggled to bear. She couldn't shake the feeling of being unworthy, a ghost in her own life. As she looked at the familiar, gaudy print, she remembered how her grandmother wore it with grace during better days. Now it felt like a reminder of everything Nora wanted to escape: unpaid bills, fading dreams, and apathetic students who slouched in their seats, their eyes glazed over as she passionately taught them about brushstrokes and colors. Wouldn't they all rather be scrolling through their phones than grappling with Van Gogh? A small part of her admired their apathy, wishing she could follow their lead and let the heaviness of her responsibilities slide away. Instead, she was here, with an obligation to uphold her family's legacy while nursing a heartache for her grandmother's declining health. But the threat of corruption cast a shadow over the gala. The temptation to hide the misappropriation of funds that Nora discovered lingered just beneath the surface, like a sharp blade ready to strike. How could she betray her students by turning a blind eye? Yet how could she risk everyone's fragile hope? Her hands trembled, and she closed her eyes, wishing for clarity that felt just beyond reach. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can, leave a like. It really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The night of the gala unfolded with a vivid contrast to her muted existence. Hidden behind glamour and laughter, she felt a sense of disconnection amidst the masks everyone wore. That's when her eyes met Marco's. His presence as magnetic as it was intimidating, his blazer tailored in ways that suggested he didn't quite belong in this small-town affair, yet he commanded the space effortlessly. Nora's heart raced. It was an unwelcome thrill, a catastrophic juxtaposition to the weight of her moral dilemma. The man's smile offered warmth, but Nora questioned the intentions behind it. As they began to converse, his charm enveloped her, cutting through her layers of uncertainty like the brush she wielded in class. Marco spoke with intensity, a devil-may-care attitude that drew her in. Yet shards of darkness loomed as he casually let slip the realities of his world, the whispers of corruption that tangled around the school like a noose, the very scandal threatening to steal away everything she held dear. Her mind spiraled with panic. Devotion to her family and students battled it out against a growing affection for this man whose dangerous allure pulled her closer. Looking into his deep-set eyes, she questioned if love could truly conquer such disparities in their lives, or if it would only unravel the fragile threads of hope she clung to. Doubts smoldered within her, but with every glance, the idea of potential escape danced tauntingly around her mind. And then, as if sealed with a warning, her phone buzzed in her pocket. The screen lit up, displaying a message from Marco that shook her to the core. "We have to talk. It's about what I've hidden from you." The words echoed in her mind, and Nora was left on the precipice of confrontation, where the weight of decisions loomed large, and the night turned unforgivingly dark. Nora's heart raced as she stood rooted to the spot, staring at the screen of her phone, her mind racing with the implications of Marco's message. The air buzzed with the vibrant sounds of the gala around her, yet they felt muted, distant, like she was encased in glass. She felt torn between the thrill of Marco's presence and the impending shadows of his secrets. What could he possibly be hiding? Did it relate to the fund misappropriation she had uncovered weeks ago? Her gut twisted at the thought. Was this charming man with his razor-sharp smile and disarming wit entwined in something darker? Did she, in some reckless way, flirt with danger simply by allowing him into her life? Steeling herself, Nora slipped away from the bustling crowd, her heels echoing softly on the polished floor. She found an empty corner away from prying eyes and nervously shoved her dress strap back into place, as though a simple adjustment could steady her swirling thoughts. She wished for clarity, but found only nagging fears, each one amplifying the uncertainty she felt about him. "Why did I let him in?" she whispered to herself, half in teasing despair, half in realization. She had always prided herself on her perceptiveness, her ability to cut through the chaos of adolescent disinterest and reach the hearts of her students. Wasn't she simply applying that same passion to her own life? Yet she questioned whether this was genuine discovery or reckless abandonment. As she looked out across the gathering, watching laughter blossom like flowers in the spring evening breeze, she was struck by the juxtaposition of joy and duplicity. The people she cared for, the students she battled to inspire every day, were the same vulnerable souls who would be affected by any fallout from Marco's world. Could she turn her back now simply to protect her growing affections? Resolutely, she typed a quick reply. "I'm listening." A calm dread settled in her chest. No matter how alluring Marco was, a confrontation was necessary. She had too much to lose, and the spark of something real could not blind her to the truth. Moments later, Marco appeared, his expression unreadable as he approached. There was a moment, a fleeting second, where their eyes locked and the rest of the world faded into a blur. Her senses heightened, she felt the electric pulse of attraction mingling with a profound sense of threat. Was he the remedy to her dreariness or a catalyst for chaos? "Thank you for meeting me," he said softly, his voice a low rumble. He effortlessly closed the distance between them, and for a brief moment, his presence even felt protective despite the rising tension. "Marco, let's just cut to the chase. You mentioned something you were hiding from me." Her voice trembled slightly, the words spilling out like a hailstorm. She needed him to reveal what lay beneath his charming veneer, the truth that could either shatter her precarious balance or galvanize her resolve. He hesitated, conflict flashing across his features, and then he leaned closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "It's bigger than you think. The corruption is rampant, and it involves people you trust." Nora's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean? Who?" She felt the room spin, not from the overwhelming excitement of the gala, but from the weight of her choices crashing down on her like a tidal wave. "Listen, Nora, there are forces at play that you can't even begin to imagine," Marco finally replied, his voice low yet urgent. She wanted to break his gaze, yet something compelled her to hold it, searching for both a glimmer of truth and a spark of danger in his stormy eyes. The connection felt undeniable, but was it real or nothing more than a mirage crafted in a sea of manipulation? "What do you mean by forces?" she pressed, her voice steady despite the chaos raging within. It was a calculated risk. She needed details, clarity. It wasn't just about her emotions anymore. This could unravel into a lesson in self-discovery, or it could summon a life she had only read about in books, pushing her beyond any comfort she had established. "They're tangled in financial matters you wouldn't believe," Marco said, his brow furrowed with seriousness. "People you've respected, your coworkers, even your mentors, they're not who you think they are. They're using their positions to siphon funds, and now it's pulled me in too. I couldn't stand by and let it happen." A wave of nausea swept through her. The implications sparked the ever-familiar fight response within her, igniting the part of her that fought for her students, for the integrity she had always upheld. The question lingered. Was she prepared to take on this battle? Every fiber of her being screamed at her to run, yet the yearning for truth tethered her to the spot. "Why should I believe you, Marco?" she challenged, wrestling against the tide of her emotions. "Because I've seen it," he said, lifting his hand as if to silence her doubts. "I've gathered documents, proof of every deceitful move they've made. You're smart, Nora, smarter than I am right now. If you choose to walk away, you might never know how deep the corruption runs, and it could destroy everything you care about." His words struck like a well-aimed arrow, prodding at her commitment to her profession and her students. She thought about the vulnerable kids she nurtured, finding their way in a world filled with potential peril, their futures hanging in the balance. How could she ever turn her back on them after discovering something so detrimental? "Okay," she exhaled, surprised by her own steadiness, "but I need to know exactly what I'm getting into." Strength began to build in her chest, a newfound resolve swelling against the insecurities that had plagued her moments ago. She felt as though she had peeled back one layer of her own skin, one she had long believed was unbreakable. "Meet me tomorrow at my office," he instructed, the urgency returning to his voice as he stepped closer. "I can show you the documents, but you must promise to keep an open mind and not jump to conclusions." A flame flickered in her heart, fueled by a blend of trepidation and excitement. This was her moment, her chance to challenge not only the unraveling deception around her, but also the ideas she had about herself. She might emerge from this knowing who she truly was, her purpose sharpened. Maybe, just maybe, she could also see Marco in a new light. Not the charming man who once made her pulse race in ways she didn't expect, but as a collaborator in their struggle against oppression, albeit one with his own shadows. "We'll do this together," she promised, almost as much to herself as to him. Whatever lay ahead, she realized she'd stepped onto a battleground that could either forge her into something powerful or leave her splintered. As she walked away, Nora felt a searing uncertainty mixed with a newfound strength. Would she champion for the truth, even if it meant confronting the mentors she had admired? The stakes had escalated, and with it, the urgency of her impending choice loomed ever closer. The moment was imminent. She could sense it in the pit of her stomach. Tomorrow could either ignite a fire for justice or quench her hopes for a simple life. She pondered where this path might lead, daring to face her fears as she braced herself for revelations that could transform everything she knew. With her heart pounding, she realized it was now or never. Could she harness this opportunity to reclaim her narrative, or would it unravel into a story of despair? The threads of fate began to weave together, and all she could do was prepare for the approach of the storm. Nora tossed and turned that night, visions of deceit and loyalty swirling through her mind like a tempest. The weight of anticipation pressed down upon her, each tick of the clock amplifying the urgency she felt about the disclosures that lay ahead. Her life had always been orderly, predictable. Students to teach, papers to grade, quiet evenings spent ink-staining her fingers with lesson plans. Now, that serene existence felt like a fragile facade crumbling before her eyes. Dawn broke with a reluctant sun, casting a pale light through her bedroom window where she lay paralyzed by indecision. What if Marco was right? What if the allies she trusted were masquerading as foes? She couldn't help but feel a flicker of anger that these people, her mentors, might be tainted by greed and corruption. Still, deeper down was a flicker of awakening. She had spent her career adhering to principles of honesty. Now she stood at a precipice where those morals could be scrutinized, questioned, tested. As she dressed, her thoughts spun stories of potential discoveries, the threads of hope and danger intertwining. Each garment she put on felt heavy. They seemed to symbolize the roles she played in both her professional and personal life.
She stripped down her choices, opting for something simple and unassuming, a nod to her long-held belief in remaining unfettered by appearances. Walking to Marco's office felt like stepping into a minefield. With every step, Nora rehearsed potential dialogues in her mind. What will she say? How would she confront this truth, this essential part of her being that could transform everything?
The streets blurred as her gaze focused inward, catching herself echoing one mantra: clarity before conflict. Arriving at the office, she pushed through the door, determination pooling in her gut. Marco's office was filled with the muted clutter of chaotic paperwork and towering files, symbolic of the storm they were about to face. He placed his gaze on her, awe mingled with urgency. "You came," he said simply, a half-smile flickering on his lips. "Yes," she replied, letting resolve seep into her tone. "Show me what you have." Marco nodded, leading her to the desk where he had laid out a series of documents. As she scanned the pages, her brows furrowed in scrutiny, an unyielding sense of disbelief washed over her. Reports of mismanaged funds, emails entwined in deception, the evidence was undeniable. It was both sickening and, paradoxically, liberating. This knowledge transformed her fear into fuel. "They've been lining their pockets while our resources dwindle," Marco said, his voice thick with anguish and rage. "If we expose them, it could change everything. But it's dangerous, Nora. There's more risk involved than just professional repercussion." An electric pulse shot through her. She realized she was navigating a crossroads unlike anything she had encountered before. "I can't sit idly by and watch. Whether they fall or I do, I have to act." A wave of clarity surged within her, a reflection of the resolve she had so long buried. As they delved deeper into the documents, Nora's analytical mind processed each revelation, each betrayal. She could feel her past self slipping away. Her identity was forging into something bolder. The truth had indeed marked her. It polished her spirit and illuminated her moral core. But even as she plummeted into the depths of corruption, a disquiet brewed within her. The further they pushed, the harsher the ramifications would become. Did her newfound bravery stem from genuine resolve, or was it a desperate bid to escape the mundane? She had to reconcile this conflict. Could she uphold justice without crossing moral boundaries herself? Nora locked eyes with Marco, a burst of determination solidifying their partnership. "We have to plan every step ahead. I can't afford to lose myself along the way." "The time has come to face them," Marco asserted, conviction radiating from his words. The weight of their mission loomed, forging the path ahead. But as they began to devise their strategy, an unsettling thought gnawed at her. Was someone watching? Someone who could unravel everything? The taste of conflict simmered, leaving her thirsting for clarity. Could she slip through this web of distrust unscathed, or was she marked for a consequence greater than she understood? Unbeknownst to them, shadows loomed, much darker than what they had anticipated. Tomorrow arrived swiftly, and as she prepared to confront the powerful figures tugging the strings of her integrity, a haunting thought clung to her. Would she emerge as a champion of truth, or become a casualty of her own convictions? The moment of reckoning neared, and with it the veil on her identity threatened to slip away. Nora's heartbeat kicked into an irregular rhythm as she sat at the table with Marco, their plans mapping out the fight they were about to undertake. The documents spread before her felt almost like a living entity, each page filled with betrayal that clawed at her insides. As they outlined their strategy, a voracious desire to dismantle the corruption began to supersede her earlier misgivings. Each passing minute was a reminder that uncertainty was less daunting than complacency. "I think we should start by gathering support from those within the system who might still be honest," Marco suggested, his eyes glimmering with the fire she had hoped to ignite in herself. He had found the courage to break the silence, to push back against the tide she had thought only she could confront. It dawned on her that together they could cultivate their own form of resilience. Nora nodded, but apprehension lingered. Who could they trust? The stakes felt monumental, unfamiliar ground that they were about to tread. Yet with every plan they formed, she extracted a piece of her former self, embedding it in the layers of courage she began to wear. This fight wouldn't just be for justice. It was a reclamation of everything she had believed in. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, she and Marco crafted a mission brief, meticulously sorting the revelations they could use. An unexpected satisfaction twisted through her, a sense of agency she'd never truly allowed herself. Yes, she had always been passionate about her work, but this pursuit flavored that passion with a newfound intensity, compelling her to uncover the truth while redefining the depth of her conviction. In the midst of this chaos, she faced a rising wave of self-doubt. Would her efforts bring about the change she craved, or was she merely perpetuating the cycle of deception? The shadows she sensed before had become more than an abstract worry. Now they were a palpable threat, looming over her aspirations. "Whatever happens," she said, a cautionary weight behind her voice, "we have to keep each other balanced. If one of us falters, everything could come crashing down." Marco met her gaze firmly. "We won't falter. We're in this together." The night air turned cool as they continued their preparations, and the stark contrast between the fading day and the growing darkness mirrored the internal turmoil brewing within her. Nora realized that this battle was as much about confronting external adversaries as it was about dissecting the internal fears that had silently governed her choices until now. She had built her life upon solid, unwavering grounds. Confronting the direct threats to that foundation became an overwhelming task. Could she shatter the very ideals she had sworn to uphold to safeguard her own position? Or, conversely, would her own moral compass see her suffer irreparable consequences? When Nora finally left the office, she remained haunted by the thought of the negotiations to come. The corridors felt longer, each turn echoing with the weight of commitments that lay ahead. As she stepped out into the night, a realization washed over her. The thrum of ambition pulsing in her veins was at odds with the facades collapsing under the pressure of impending truths. She felt the delicate thread of her identity stretching, each moment taut with the potential for either destruction or empowerment. In that moment, she made a silent promise to herself. She wouldn't shy away from the consequences. If they remained under threat, it wouldn't simply be due to external dangers. It would also arise from her own evolution, the emergence of her very own power. But as she made her way through the darkened streets, a chilling realization sent a shiver down her spine. Was someone indeed observing them? The feeling that she had stepped into a game engineered by forces far more dangerous than she had anticipated unfurled in layers within her, igniting both trepidation and a thrilling resolve. The battle wasn't merely about uncovering lies, but about her very existence within a framework that sought to bind her. The clock was ticking, and as her instincts sharpened, she prepared to confront her past and what lay lurking in the shadows. Tomorrow would bring thresholds they dared not cross without recalibrating their moral compasses. Would she and Marco emerge triumphant in their quest for liberation? Or would the unseen forces claim them as their sacrifices in this high-stakes game? Nora hardly slept that night. The weight of her thoughts feasted on her resolve, gnawing at the edges of her determination. Each time she closed her eyes, images of the documents filled her mind. Names, dates, and implications danced ominously, refusing to be banished. Could their mission remain clandestine? It was no longer just an occupation. It had morphed into a crusade, and lurking inside her was a burgeoning sense of purpose. As dawn's light crept through her window, Nora made a decision. She would confront the people who grasped the strings of power from within. It was risky, undeniably dangerous,
but comfort had dulled her vitality long enough. She'd embrace the chaos, trusting that her instincts could keep her grounded. In the quiet of the early morning, Nora prepared for her day. She chose her clothes with an uncharacteristic care, the fabric whispering against her skin, as if echoing a transformation. The simple act of presenting herself in a new light felt liberating. She was no longer just a pawn to be played. She would be a player instead. With the adrenaline surging through her veins, she realized the mission had become more than just a fight against corruption. It was a struggle for her identity as well. But just as she resolved to press on, a phone call disrupted their momentum, an unknown number flashing ominously on her screen. The voice on the other end sent a jolt down her spine, a chilling warning that made her blood run cold. You need to stop now, or your efforts will lead to grave consequences. The eerie calm that followed struck like a thunderclap, leaving Nora reeling. What lay ahead? Would she relinquish her fight in the face of intimidation, or would she plow through? The walls were closing in, but the stakes had never felt higher. A choice loomed, and the game was far from over. Nora's pulse raced as she ended the call, the last vestiges of calm shattered by the voice's grim warning. She felt an absurd mixture of fear and defiance twisting in her gut, as if her body were at war with itself. The stakes had escalated dramatically, and with them, Nora recognized a looming crossroads, not just in her mission, but within herself. Was that about us? Marco's voice cut through her reverie. His brow furrowed, concern flooding his features. The burden of their shared endeavor pinned weight on her heart. Did she have the right to drag him into her mess? No, just some charity event, she lied, faking a nonchalance that did not settle on her tongue evenly. They resumed their movement through the building, but the walls now felt colder, the air thicker. Nora's gaze remained fixed on the floor ahead as the gears of her mind worked furiously. Doubts sprawled like weeds among her growing determination. She had started this fight with a clear moral compass, but had been careless about the ramifications of crossing those in power. What if the next warning was worse? What if she didn't just risk herself, but Marco and the others too? How are we supposed to meet with the manager again, after what he divulged? Marco's voice pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. She halted, forcing herself to regard him. We can't back down now. Those documents illustrate plans far worse than what we imagined, and if we don't act, things will spiral further out of control. In that moment, seeing Marco's unwavering faith made her heart swell. He had become more than an ally. He represented a part of her life she didn't realize she craved, someone willing to stand with her against dark odds. That realization fueled her focus, igniting a resolve stronger than her fear. Okay, we need a plan, a real one, she said, the firmness in her voice surprising even herself. Let's dig deeper. The manager hasn't tied himself to those documents yet, but if we can uncover more data, we can present something concrete. He can't turn back if we can show how deep this runs. They agreed to meet later that evening, bringing their collected evidence and ideas. But Nora recognized she needed to confront something more personal first. In the hours leading up to the meeting, she wandered through the office, picking up pieces of conversation and snippets of influence. Equipped with a sharper vision for identifying allies, she approached colleagues with more determination, discussing rumors and tensions with new clarity. Each encounter, charged with purpose, chipped away at her insecurities, revealing her ability to inspire action. Stepping into the coffee shop that served as their meeting place felt like crossing into a battleground. The atmosphere pulsed with a sense of urgency. Marco was already seated, a quiet determination stamped across his features. I found something, he said without preamble, sliding a stack of papers across the table. The documents unfolded a timeline of illicit transactions. Patterns linking upper management to troubling deals emerged like a filigree against a stark background. Where did you get this? She gasped, astonished. An anonymous tip. Someone wants to help us. His eyes sparkled with potential, excitement mingling with apprehension. Nora's heart raced, but alongside the thrill of discovery was a different sensation: dread. How far would she go? What collateral damage could emerge in their fight against this corruption? Yet, before she could respond, the tension shifted like a storm rolling in. A shadow fell across their table, intercepting their earnest energy. The manager stood before them, brow knitted with concern. "We need to talk, in private," he whispered, his voice barely rising above the soft whir of the coffee shop. Nora exchanged a glance with Marco, her heart constricting. Would this be the moment when their efforts became exposed? Was she ready to confront the realities that awaited? As the manager led them to a back room, Nora inhaled deeply, steeling herself for whatever revelations lay ahead. Would transparency in a hidden world grant her the strength to stand tall, or would the truth weigh heavier than anticipated? With stakes now raised higher than she could foresee, she followed him, mind racing with possibilities and dangers. The darkness felt tangible, ready to consume her if she faltered. What awaited her in the private room? Would revelations emerge that could either destroy their efforts or endanger their lives further? The air thrummed with an unspoken tension. A catalyst for change was moments away, and she was standing on the precipice of something monumental. The back room was dimly lit, heavy with tension. As the door clicked shut behind them, Nora's pulse quickened, the air thick with unspoken words. She shared a fleeting glance with Marco, both of them aware that the conversation ahead could pivot their mission in unpredictable directions. "What's this about?" Nora asked, her voice steady, bracing for confrontation. The manager rubbed a hand over his brow, unease seeping through his authoritative demeanor. "You both have uncovered things you shouldn't have." The weight of his words settled ominously in the room, and Nora felt a cold knot tightening inside her. "I have a right to know what's happening here," she pressed, refusing to back down. If he thought she would cower, he vastly underestimated her resolve. He shifted his weight, glancing at the door as if to gauge how loud he could speak. "You think you're fighting for justice, but you're meddling in dangerous waters. These aren't just your typical business dealings. It's much bigger, and you need to be aware of the risks involved." Each word hung in the air, a mixture of threat and warning. This wasn't just about corruption anymore. This was a labyrinthine struggle against powers that dwarfed her understanding. Nora felt her heart rise, energy surging beneath her initial fear. Her instincts screamed at her to dive deeper, to challenge him. "The risks don't scare me," she affirmed, grounding herself in her newly found determination. "What scares me is remaining silent when I know what's going on." He crossed his arms, studied her, momentarily silent. His expression shifted from concern to something akin to respect, the tension in his stance shifting as he measured her conviction. For the first time, she saw the cracks in his authority. "All right," he finally said, voice lowered. "You need to understand that if you keep pushing this, you may lose more than just your job or reputation." "And if I don't push it? What does that make me? Complicit?" The challenge rolled off her tongue like a dare, the intensity of her own commitment fueling the conversation. Marco, silent until now, leaned in. "Nora's right. We can't just stand by. Whatever happens next, we face it together." The manager studied Marco before turning back to Nora. "Then you both need to be prepared. If you think you're ready to handle the fallout, then I suggest you know everything before you go any further." Without further hesitation, he lifted a folder from his briefcase and set it on the table. The documents crackled under Nora's fingertips like a live wire. She opened them promptly, skimming the pages filled with names, dates, and unsettling transactions. The connections ran deeper than she had imagined, implicating not just the company, but entangling community leaders and influential figures in a web of deceit. Dread washed over her, but mixed with resolve. In this moment, clarity hit Nora like a revelation. Understanding the full scope of the darkness wasn't just an act of defiance, but necessary armor against the impending storm. "Do you want to stop this?" she asked him, seeking an ally in a hostile territory. "I want to protect you," he replied, a resignation settling in his voice that both surprised and bewildered her. "Protect? From what? We're not asking for favors, we're demanding change." She spat, indignation bubbling to the surface. His brow furrowed, and for a split second, she thought she saw something flash behind his eyes. A hint of fear, acknowledgement, perhaps an intertwining of interests. "Nora, this is not just about you anymore. They won't hesitate if they feel threatened. If you go up against them, the consequences reach far beyond your understanding." Nora absorbed his words, grappling with the looming reality that threatened to obliterate the foundation she had built on hope and righteousness. Was she prepared to confront the wrath of powerful men? Before she could respond, a sudden bang echoed against the door, wrenching her attention. The urgency of the moment surged. "What was that?" Marco's voice crackled with apprehension. Nora's instincts flared. The manager's expression morphed into one of panic, a shadow crossing his face. "We need to leave. Now." The stakes had just escalated, and with them the gravity of her decisions tangled with an uncertain future. Was she ready to embrace the chaos about to unfold? As they bolted toward the exit, Nora's mind raced with possibilities. Each decision mounted pressure upon her conscience. It was a choice between her integrity and her safety. The moment of truth had come, and she had to decide where she stood. Would she retreat into the shadows or embrace the storm she had unleashed? The door burst open behind them, and Nora inhaled sharply, adrenaline surging through her veins. An anguished reckoning loomed just beyond the threshold. What awaited them outside? Did she have the courage to confront whatever emerged from the darkness? Nora pushed through the door, heart racing in time with her hurried breaths. The hallway was dim, illuminated only by flickering fluorescent lights that cast ominous shadows against the walls. Marco rushed ahead, taking the lead, driven by an instinctive need for safety. But Nora's feet felt bolted to the ground as the weight of the moment crashed over her. What was she truly walking into? The path ahead brimmed with uncertainty, yet the thrill of defiance pulsated through her veins. "Keep moving," he hissed, glancing back with unease etched on his features. He didn't understand what she felt, a strange mix of fear, excitement, and an unwavering sense of purpose. The potential consequences loomed like storm clouds over her head, but Nora was not one to shy away. "I can't just run," she gasped, turning to face him. "Not now that I know." "What do you know?" His eyes searched hers, pleading for clarity amidst the chaos. "That these aren't just paper trails. This is a network. It's a map of deception," she replied, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I can't ignore that. We can't." Marco hesitated, understanding flickering across his features. "Nora, don't you see, engaging with this could mean losing everything." "I refuse to go back to ignorance," she countered, her voice steady with conviction despite the tremor in her hands. "I have to see this through. I need to understand how deep it all goes before we make a move." The weight of her newfound resolve radiated from her, each revelation lighting a fire within her that she hadn't known existed. If she wanted to dismantle this intricate web, she needed to understand not just the surface details, but the motivations driving those at the center of it all. "All right," Marco relented, his voice lower now, a note of reluctant acceptance hanging in the air. "But it's your call. Just promise me we do this together, no secrets." Grateful for his support, Nora nodded firmly. "Together," she echoed, anchoring herself in this newfound partnership. Emerging into the cool night air, they stumbled onto a strange street outside, and her mind raced with uncalibrated thoughts. For a moment, the world felt surreal. The distant sounds of the city seemed muted, as if she were trapped in a bubble where time stood still and her purpose crystallized into sharp relief. "What now?" Marco asked, breaking the trance. Nora took a breath, filling her lungs with the chill of determination.
We follow the money, literally. We need to trace those transactions back to their sources, find out who they touch, who benefits. Marco nodded, suddenly invigorated. If we can expose them, we could bring everything to light. But we need to be careful. An investigation like this, it's bigger than we think. With each step, Nora felt the weight of ambition settle squarely on her shoulders. Was she ready to shift from passive observer to active participant in this dangerous game? Their survival hinged on not only knowledge, but how they wielded it. Let's start with the community leaders mentioned in those documents, she urged, spurred on by a mixture of bravery and desperation. They're the key to unraveling this. We need to approach them discreetly. The night thickened around them, night crawling in, and as they strategized, a flicker of foreboding crept in. There was danger looming beyond the shadows, threats unspoken yet palpable. A sudden realization washed over Nora. This was her moment of transformation. She was poised on the threshold of becoming someone who wouldn't shrink in the face of challenge. As they discussed their strategy, a presence loomed in the corner of her vision, a figure watching, predatory eyes fixated on them. Nora's heart pounded as she turned to look, identifying the unmistakable air of authority radiating from the man's posture. Who was he? And was the danger already closer than they had anticipated? "Marco, we might need to move." But before she could finish, the man stepped forward, a sly smile curling at the edges of his lips. A power dynamic shifted as the pieces began to align in a game of chess far more treacherous than they had imagined. "Are you too lost?" he inquired, his voice honeyed yet dripping with menace. Nora felt her heart drop, and a chilling realization struck her. Confronting the darkness was one thing, but dealing with those who thrived within it was an entirely different battle. The time had come to face her most pressing challenge yet, but did she have the mettle to stand her ground? The moments that followed felt suspended in time, every heartbeat echoing through the silence of the night. The man who confronted them leaned back against the lamppost, an arrogant confidence exuding from him, as if he were in full control of the game they had unknowingly entered. Nora's gut twisted, the stakes escalating rapidly. Confrontation with him meant navigating a labyrinth of danger they hadn't prepared for. "Who are you?" Nora demanded, steadying her shaking hands. She had fought valiantly to reclaim her sense of agency, and she wasn't about to let fear derail her. "Let's just say I oversee affairs that involve money and loyalty. And you two, well, you've crossed paths with things best left untouched," he said, his smile widening like a predator sizing up its prey. In her heart, Nora felt that familiar fire ignite. This was the moment she had been inching toward since delving into the depths of corruption at her workplace. The shadows that preyed on her convictions couldn't take root if she stood firm. They could not douse the flame that had sparked within her. "Maybe it's you who should step back," Marco interjected, his voice low, ready to defy the aura of intimidation wrapping around them. It felt electrifying. Together, they stood at the threshold of an exceptional transformation. "Cute," the man retorted, dismissing his words with a chuckle. "But the only thing you're going to achieve is disaster. You have no idea what you're meddling with." Nora squeezed Marco's hand instinctively, a silent support that reinforced their partnership. They had climbed this steep hill together, and turning back now was not an option. "You need to understand, we won't stop until the truth is exposed, whatever it takes," she declared, the intensity of her conviction echoing in the air. For a moment, the man's arrogance faltered, his mask briefly slipping. Nora recognized it as a flicker of fear, igniting the embers of confidence she had nurtured. She was stronger than she'd allowed herself to believe. "All right, I can see you're willing to risk it," he said, leaning closer, his voice dropping to a low pitch that sent chills through her. "But know this, every action has consequences. You won't just expose the rot, you'll uproot everyone close to you in the process. This isn't just a fight, it's a war."
"Good," she replied, not an inch of hesitation in her voice. "I've been in a war with my own doubts for far too long." The words burst forth, alive with sincerity. It was a stark realization. Her transformation wasn't just about exposing others. It was about dismantling the limitations she had placed on herself.
The man straightened, the air thick with silent challenge as he weighed her words. "Perhaps I underestimate you, but I'm offering you one last chance to walk away unscathed." "No deals," Marco affirmed, his presence a rock beside her. The atmosphere shifted. It was palpable, tension overflowing into the night. "Very well," the man said finally, a sinister smirk playing on his lips. "Let the games begin then." Without another word, he turned, vanishing into the obscurity of the evening shadows, the danger lingering like smoke in the air. Nora released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That confrontation had thrust her into an uncharted territory, a place where her character was tested, revealing not just the struggles they face, but the depth of her own resolve. "Did we just—" Marco began, his eyes wide, yet relief tinged with excitement flooded his voice. "Yes," Nora confirmed, newfound confidence propelling her forward. "We both stood our ground. We have to follow through now. This is our chance to make a difference." Each step they took away from their encounter felt like slipping out of chains that had bound them for far too long. She could feel it resonating within herself, the undeniable truth that she had unearthed her inner strength, her ability to fight for justice, and her capacity to embrace the risks it entailed. As the days became seconds, Nora and Marco outlined a detailed plan. They strategically built alliances, harnessing insights from careful discussions with colleagues who shared their vision. Unwavering bravery seeped through each exchange. Nora's confidence flourished, nurtured by a purpose greater than herself. The tide began to shift. Every small disclosure she gained illuminated connections they needed to sever to take down the corruption festering at their workplace. The shadows of fear retreated as the allies she amassed solidified into a coalition to combat the darkness. The culmination of their efforts erupted on the day of reckoning. A press conference was pre-organized, propped with hard evidence, both from their findings and from brave insiders willing to step forward. It felt surreal. She was no longer just a teacher fighting to inspire her students. She was now a champion of truth, standing alongside those willing to lend their voices. As she stood at that podium, ready to present the stark realities of deceit to the world, Nora glanced over at Marco, a rush of gratitude surging through her. The grueling journey had forged an unbreakable bond, both a challenge and triumph that had transformed not only their lives, but a community. The weight of responsibility had birthed a new purpose. With her head held high, she began to speak, the words streaming from her heart like a painting finding its form, an act of bravery unveiled in a world once cloaked in shadows. She watched as layers of uncertainty fell away, revealing newfound strength as the truth undeniably forged its path. Nora had transcended fear, transformed by the very fight that had once threatened to consume her. At that moment, she reconsidered her journey. She felt whole, anchored in fulfillment and clarity. Recognition from peers, applause echoing from the crowd, was tangible validation of her strength, not just for her work, but for who she had become. Nora had not only conquered the corruption within her school, but had dismantled the inner barriers that had restricted her for so long. Here, in this public light, she realized her destiny was not determined by her past or the choices of others. It was hers to claim, a realization blossoming into fulfillment far beyond the call of justice. This was her moment, an achievement validated not by the applause, but by the extraordinary transformation she had gone through. Nora smiled. She was more than a teacher now. She was a beacon of strength and a resolute force against everything that sought to stifle potential.
And right then, she knew that she would never overlook her inner conviction again. Now you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every click helps. Comment your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. Your voice matters. And finally, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful journey. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting this channel through these actions.